They said black men didn't have the intelligence to fly a plane. They said they didn't have the discipline or the courage. But one man refused to believe it. And because of his stubborn dream, a group of young black pilots would soon take to the skies and prove an entire nation wrong. This is the story of the vision that created the Tuskegee Airmen. The year is 1940. In the United States, the military is expanding rapidly. Planes are being built, pilots are being trained. But there's one rule that almost everyone in power agrees on. Black Americans will not be allowed to fly. At the time, the U.S. military is strictly segregated. Most black soldiers are limited to labor roles, cooking, cleaning, loading supplies. The idea of a black fighter pilot, too many military leaders. It sounds impossible. But one man is about to challenge that belief. His name is Charles Alfred Chief Anderson. Anderson was not a general. He wasn't a famous politician. He was simply a pilot with an extraordinary talent. Born in 1907, Anderson grew up in a time when aviation itself was still new. Planes were fragile machines made of wood, wire, and fabric. But Anderson was fascinated by them. There was just one problem. No flight school in America wanted to train a black pilot. So Anderson found another way. He taught himself. He studied mechanics, borrowed planes, and practiced flying whenever he could. Eventually, he became one of the most skilled black aviators in the country. But Anderson didn't just want to fly. He wanted to prove that black pilots belonged in the sky. At the time, many military officials claimed something shocking. They believed black men were mentally incapable of handling complex aircraft. Some even argued that black pilots would panic in combat. These beliefs weren't based on science. They were based on prejudice. But black newspapers, civil rights leaders, and activists refused to stay silent. Across the country, pressure began building on the U.S. government. If America is fighting for freedom overseas, they argued, then why deny opportunity at home? Finally, the U.S. Army made a reluctant decision. They would create an experimental training program for black pilots. But there was a catch. Many officials secretly expected the program to fail. If the pilots failed, it would prove their racist assumptions, and the experiment would end forever. The training base was established at Tuskegee, Alabama, and there was only one man they trusted to teach these young pilots. At Tuskegee, Anderson began training the first generation of black military pilots. Day after day, these young men studied navigation, engineering, aerodynamics, and combat flying. The standards were incredibly high, but the real pressure came from outside the airfield. Many people across the country were watching, waiting for them to fail. Then, in 1941, something extraordinary happened. A powerful visitor arrived at Tuskegee, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. She had heard about the training program, and she wanted to see it for herself. When she arrived, Chief Anderson showed her the airfield, and then he made a bold offer. Flying with a black pilot in the segregated South was controversial. As the aircraft lifted off the runway, cameras captured the moment. The First Lady of the United States. Flying with a black pilot, when she landed, she made her decision. And suddenly, the entire nation was paying attention. The Tuskegee program continued and the pilots kept proving themselves. Soon, the Tuskegee Airmen were flying combat missions in World War II, and they earned a reputation for skill, courage, and discipline. Over time, these pilots completed thousands of missions and destroyed enemy planes in battle. But their greatest victory wasn't just in the air. The success of the Tuskegee Airmen helped challenge the racist belief that black Americans could not serve equally in the military. And in 1948, the U.S. Armed Forces would finally be desegregated for that one man who believed the sky belonged to everyone. Chief Anderson didn't just teach men to fly. He helped lift an entire generation above the limits society tried to place on them. Because sometimes, the biggest revolutions don't start with armies. They start with a single dream and the courage to take it into the sky. And history would never be the same. If you love discovering untold history, subscribe to Black Micro Stories and join us for the next story.